Hello everyone, it's 7 o'clock. This is Sky News Breakfast. The 15th and 20th of December. It's been revealed this morning that those are the 2 days when nurses will stage their first national walkout across England, Wales and Northern Ireland. We'll speak to the Royal College of Nursing as fellow health unions bring pay rows to a head with industrial action throughout the NHS and GPs push to cut their core hours. Also this morning, a big day for the home nations of the World Cup, with Wales and England gearing up for their second games, and fans are told that they can wear rainbow hats and flags. It's Friday, the 25th of November. Nurses are to strike for 2 days in December, the first of what could be several walkouts over pay. NHS chiefs believe there's now no way to avert it.
Pay is a matter for the government, but our job in the NHS is to prepare for what looks like inevitable industrial action.
More disruption in a system already straining under record waiting lists ahead of a winter twindemic of flu and COVID.
As England and Wales prepare for today's games, FIFA lifts its ban on rainbow clothing and flags at World Cup matches. Also this morning, police and prosecutors to be given more criminal powers against those who share intimate and private images of people online without consent. After inviting Donald Trump back, Twitter owner Elon Musk announces more suspended accounts will have their bans lifted. Keira Knightley lends her voice to a very personal book about the war in Ukraine. We'll speak to the 12-year-old girl who wrote it. And a special delivery. We'll hear how this huge gorilla has been brought to London in an attempt to help save his species. Hello, a very good morning. You're watching Sky News Breakfast. The Nurses Union has revealed the 2 days that its members will go on strike next month in a dramatic escalation of the pay disputes that are raging across the NHS. Well, they're planned to go ahead on Thursday the 15th and Tuesday the 20th of December. The Royal College of Nursing says intensive care and A&E services will not be affected, but there will be disruption for routine care and planned surgery. The strikes will happen across England, Wales and Northern Ireland, but not at this stage in Scotland, where negotiations are ongoing. The Royal College of Nursing wants an overall pay rise of more than 19%, which the government says it simply can't afford. NHS bosses say their focus is on limiting delays and cancellations as much as possible.
Of course, pay is a matter for the government, but our job in the NHS is to prepare for what looks like inevitable industrial action. And I think it's inevitable that if strike action goes ahead, there will be some disruption. If you're a member of the public, of course, keep that appointment that you've got unless you are contacted and told that your outpatient appointment isn't going ahead or your operation might not be going ahead. But of course, from the NHS point of view, we want to make sure that we keep things obviously safe, but we do as much as we possibly can, while recognising, of course, the rights of our staff to take strike action.
Well, our correspondent Milena Veselinovic is outside the Royal College of Nursing's headquarters in central London for us. So, Milena, the dates have been announced then for this strike, the first in the union's history. So it's a big moment. Just how disruptive could it be for patients, do we think?
Well, routine appointments, routine surgeries, they will inevitably be cancelled, but urgent care will continue, and that's because, unlike other professions, there will be a number of nurses that will be exempt from strike action in order to keep patient safety, but it will be that patients will suffer. Now, the question is whether those trusts where strikes will take place could fill those gaps with agency nurses. Well, they could entice them with high pay, even though the Royal College of Nursing advice to them is also clear that they expect them not to fill the shifts of the striking workers. However, they are not obliged to do that. And what the nurses say they want is 17% at least pay rise, because they say that low wages have driven staff out of the profession. In fact, they have commissioned some research which found that in 2010, pay for a senior nurse was actually in real terms 20% higher than it is today. And they say that just in the last year, 25,000 people have left the profession. Now, on the other hand, Steve Barclay, the health secretary, says that that kind of an increase is unaffordable in the current economic climate, that it will cost £10 billion. Now, nurses in turn also say that actually it costs quite a lot of money to pay agency nurses to plug these constant gaps in staffing. It's not just a one-off, it just runs on a constant deficit of staff, and they say that that puts patients at risk. Of course, it will be patients who will bear the brunt of it, as well as that heaving NHS backlog that is about to get even bigger.
OK, Milena, thanks very much indeed. Well, meanwhile, a winter of discontent seems very much on the horizon, with nurses now joining railway staff, postal workers, university lecturers in striking within the next month. Our business and economics correspondent, Gurpreet Narwan, has been assessing how disruptive strikes have been to the UK economy this year.
At times, it can feel like everyone in Britain is going on strike. But how significant is this industrial action in a historical context? And should we really be bracing ourselves for another winter of discontent? Let's take a look at the number of working days lost to strike action. Now, this is the number of workers on strike multiplied by the number of days they've not worked. And it doesn't look that significant in recent years, not like the 2011 public sector strikes or the 2014 public sector strikes, but it has been climbing. During the pandemic, the line is flat because statisticians stopped collecting the data. This chart, it goes up to August, but we're expecting it to climb a lot higher. We know that up to 40,000 railway workers and up to 300,000 nurses are braced to go on strike before Christmas. And these strikes, they're going to be pretty short-lived. There's been a shift towards shorter bursts of action between 1 and 3 days. Nothing like the 1980s, when you could see strike action last well into a year. And which sectors are driving this increase? Well, you may have guessed, it's the transport and communication sectors. That includes railway workers, it includes postal workers, and the number of working days lost to strike action in these sectors, it's at its highest since records began in 2008. And why are workers going on strike? Well, quite simply because their pay is not keeping up with inflation. Here you can see the blue bars show real wages rising and the red bars show real wages falling. That means wages are not keeping up with inflation. And since November last year, wages have been falling. So after a decade of wage stagnation, workers are not prepared to see their living standards fall even further. But all of this strike action, it does come with a cost to the economy.
And we're asking this morning if you have an appointment or an operation which is set to be impacted by the strikes. Do get in touch with us with that industrial action, how it might be affecting you. You can email us at sky.today@sky.uk, or you can send a WhatsApp message to 07583 000 853. Let us know how you might be affected. Well, meanwhile, GPs want to pressure the government to cut their core hours to 9 to 5, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. GP bodies object to the current extended hours contract, which requires doctors to see patients on weekday evenings between 6:30 and 8 p.m. They say these hours unfairly impact on GPs who have families. The latest NHS data shows 1 in 5 consultations were held more than a fortnight after they were booked. So let's take a look now at what's making the front pages of the morning papers. And despite growing NHS waiting lists, the Mail covers that report about GPs, that they're demanding that in future they work just 9 to 5. The Times, meanwhile, says that middle-income households are to receive grants worth up to £15,000 to help insulate their homes. The Eye says there's likely to be conflict in the Cabinet over plans to withhold visas from foreign students pursuing what are described as low-quality degrees in an effort to reduce net migration. First-class disgrace, says the Mirror, which says Royal Mail has paid out almost £2 billion to shareholders since privatisation, but still won't give its staff a decent pay rise. The Daily Telegraph says Boris Johnson and Liz Truss are planning to challenge the authority of new PM Rishi Sunak by demanding an end to the ban on new onshore wind farms. And The Guardian says MPs want an investigation into claims against the Tory peer Baroness Mone about payments she allegedly received from her ties to a PPE manufacturer during the pandemic, allegations that she's denied. Now, let's turn our attention to the World Cup in Qatar, where FIFA has lifted its ban on rainbow clothes and flags for fans ahead of two home nations games for Wales and England today. Fans have so far been stopped from wearing rainbow bucket hats to matches, and there's been a contentious debate about players wearing armbands in support of LGBTQ+ rights. Well, later this morning, Wales play Iran, and then later it's England versus the US. And managers insist their sides shouldn't feel pressured to protest.
I think we've got to be comfortable that we know what we stand for. That's not to say we won't do anything moving forward if the timing's right and if it's right, but I think if we're rushing to be seen to be doing something, then we could make an error which doesn't land well. And I think at this moment in time, for the players and myself especially, we've got to be focusing on the games.
I want my players to focus fully on playing games of football and winning games, and I'm sure Germany now, in hindsight, will probably have the same message.
Our correspondent Alistair Bunkle is outside the stadium where Wales will play later on this morning. I'm told we've just lost that connection to him. He's back. Alistair, you're such a tease. There you are, all looking good there, standing out there in the sunshine in Doha. So, Alistair, FIFA have reversed their ban on rainbow hats and flags. How's that going down with fans there?
Yeah, it's going down really well. I think most of the fans thought that it was a ridiculous ban in the first place, and there was considerable annoyance, particularly amongst the Welsh team, actually. The Welsh manager, who you heard from just then, was very critical of FIFA's ban, calling it ridiculous after their opening match. But that has changed now. FIFA give us their assurances that if anybody does want to wear a rainbow bucket hat or any kind of clothing in rainbow colours, then they will be allowed in the stadium. They won't be stopped this time. We spoke to Laura McAllister, who was the former Welsh women's footballer, who was famously stopped at the security, asked to remove her hat, and that was taken to FIFA, and that's partly what has led to this change of position. We spoke to her about an hour or so ago as Welsh fans were gathering this morning.
Yes, I will, and I was always going to do that, to be honest, for the reasons that we gave when we were stopped on Monday night, that if we just give in to the first resistance, there's not much point having principles about inclusion and diversity. So, I'm very aware that a lot of friends and family and other football fans at home didn't come to Qatar because they felt it wasn't somewhere that was safe for LGBT people, or were opposed to the regime and the views on migrant workers and women and LGBT people. So I think those of us who are here have a responsibility to stand up for them as well. In a sense, we're their voice here. So yes, of course, I was always going to wear my bucket hat, and I'll be doing it again today.
Well, both the managers, when we spoke to them yesterday, want to concentrate on the football now. I think, to be honest, most of the fans that we've spoken to want to do the same. So let's look at the football. Wales up first in just a couple of hours' time. First thing I would say, Anna, it's really hot today. I think it's probably the hottest day since we've been here, and they play at 1 p.m. local time. So it's going to be about as hot as the day can throw at them. The stadiums are air-conditioned, so they'll hope that kicks in. But Gareth Bale will become Wales's most capped player in history when he plays today. I think Joe Allen will also be in the side, which will please Welsh fans. They'll hope that they can beat Iran. Iran obviously conceded 6 against England. I think Welsh fans will be cheering England on quietly as well. The reason being that if England put a lot of goals past the USA, that does Wales's chances of qualifying a real deal of good. So, 2 big matches today, England-USA, later on this evening, 10 p.m. local time, but just in a few hours' time, it's Wales against Iran.
An exciting day of football ahead. Alistair, thanks very much indeed for that. And so it's a significant moment for America's men's team, who've been overshadowed a bit by the success of the country's female footballers on the world stage. Sky's James Matthews reports now from Maryland on how some believe the US can go all the way in Qatar.
The secret of their success doesn't lie in any one place, but one place to look is here.
I expect energy from everybody.
The University of Maryland is a powerhouse in America's college production line.
1, 2, 3. Excellent. Let's go.
Sasho Sarovsky's coaching career spans the decades of America's growth from fall guys to contenders. Graduates of his have played in the past 5 World Cups.
There's a competitiveness about the American athlete, a winning mentality, a toughness that is bred through sometimes across different sports.
Club academies have become the predominant route here to the sport's highest level. But the US college system remains a pathway to the professional game.
20 years ago, the United States reached the quarter-finals of the World Cup. They are players on the big stage, albeit forever in the shadow of the women's team in this country. They've won the World Cup 4 times.
America's women are the sports superpowers, due in part to the years when soccer scholarships attracted the best female athletes, while men chose more traditional American sports. Whatever the successes and failures of the past, it's all about the game in Qatar.
Yeah, I will say USA. I have hope. I have belief. I have belief in the US. I believe in the team.
USA, all the way. We're winning the cup. It's coming home. It's called soccer. It's coming home. It's coming home. It's coming. Soccer's coming home. It's coming home.
Here they sing Soccer's Coming Home, a Mickey take on England's anthem. Having been given the beautiful game, they're giving a bit back. James Matthews, Sky News in Maryland.
Lots of football to watch later. Meanwhile, still to come here on the show, the Royal College of Nursing's Director for England, Patricia Markey, will be joining us very shortly. And then after 7:30, I'll be joined by the founder of Not Your Porn, who worked with the government on the amendments to the online safety bill. Now, former Prime Ministers Boris Johnson and Liz Truss have joined a backbench rebellion in an attempt to overturn a ban on onshore wind farms. Now, that's despite Mr Johnson supporting the ban when he was in number 10. Well, our politics correspondent Rob Powell joins me now. So tell us a little bit about this amendment and how much support it's getting.
Yeah, I think what we're starting to see from the kind of state of permanent crisis we've almost been in for much of this year in politics, the kind of more steady pace of policy making and legislation now get going again. And I think in that context, this is interesting. Essentially, this is an amendment that's been put forward by Simon Clarke, so an attempt to change a bill, legislation that's going through Parliament, put forward by a close ally of Liz Truss, that would end the effective ban on onshore wind farms that's been in place, I think, since the David Cameron years of government. It's attracting quite a lot of support. How this works is that there has to be people sign up to say that they support these changes, and then, unless the government caves on it, there's a vote that takes place in the Commons to see whether more broadly MPs back it. What makes this interesting is that Liz Truss and Boris Johnson, 2 former Prime Ministers, have put their names to this. So really the kind of most significant thing either of them have really done since they left Downing Street. The bill that this is changing, the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill, had attracted a bit of a rebellion earlier this week as well on an amendment around planning changes as well. So a thorny bill, a thorny piece of legislation for Rishi Sunak. I think what this tells us politically is that there are clearly people sat on those green benches, generally close to the previous governments and administrations, that even a month or 2 into Rishi Sunak's premiership are prepared to make a stand and have a little pushback on issues like this. And I think when you're a government that's trying to push through controversial policy around tax and is potentially going into a couple of years that could be very painful for the public, but also in the eyes of many MPs, putting forward quite unconservative policies, actually this shows you there is an appetite for rebellion there. And whilst this may be on a relatively minor issue now, 6 months, a year down the line, you might find some of the same characters coalescing on a more major rebellion, on a more major issue.
And of course, always interesting when it's former prime ministers and it's Rishi Sunak. That's when it's those names involved, it's always going to be especially interesting, isn't it? Rob, for the moment, thanks very much indeed. We'll be speaking to you a little bit later on. But in the meantime, new laws will give police more criminal powers against those who share intimate images of people online without permission and those who manipulate pornographic pictures. In an amendment to the online safety bill, those found guilty of taking photos down a woman's top or manipulating explicit images to look like someone else could be jailed.
These measures will make sure that using the internet, using digital means, photographs, video clips with smartphones to intimidate women, to harass them, to embarrass and humiliate them is not only morally abhorrent, but will feel the full force of the law with prison sentences to match.
Let's take a look now at some of the day's other headlines. And a man is due in court today charged with 3 counts of murder after a fire in Nottingham on Sunday. 31-year-old Jamie Barrow will appear before magistrates today after 28-year-old Fatoumata Hirandan and her 2 children died following a fire at their home in Clifton. A further £30 million of funding has been granted to projects aimed at upgrading the UK's fishing industry. The investment from the government aims to help with the expansion of facilities for processing popular British fish such as Scottish salmon and Cornish sardines. The number of identity fraud attempts have increased by more than a fifth over the past year. Credit information company Experian is warning that this could spike further over the Christmas period as fraudsters try to take advantage of online transactions. The number of people looking to rent has increased as potential home buyers have been put off by high mortgage rates. That's according to housing company Rightmove, who found inquiries into renting were 23% higher in October compared to the same month last year. China has reported a new daily record number of COVID cases for the second consecutive day. Almost 40,000 new infections were registered as lockdown measures tightened and mass testing continues across the country. Elon Musk has announced there will be an amnesty for suspended accounts on Twitter from next week. The decision comes after he asked in a poll whether to allow accounts that haven't broken the law or engaged in egregious spam to be reinstated. 72% voted in favour. So let's return now to our top story here this morning. The 15th and 20th of December are the dates that members of the Royal College of Nursing will walk out over pay, the biggest strike in NHS history. So let's speak to a member of the union's executive. I'm joined now by the Royal College of Nursing's Director for England, Patricia Marquis. Very good morning to you, Patricia Marquis. Thanks so much for talking to us. So the first ever national walkout by your union, a big decision. Why have you taken it?
Well, our members are sending a very loud message to the government that things need to change for nurses in their NHS. So we got a pay award this year of £1,400, which may sound a lot to people, but actually nursing pay has fallen behind over the last 10 years by around the rate of inflation plus 5%. So our members are hugely disappointed that they didn't get anywhere near what they needed to take their salaries back to the level they were 10 years ago. And what's really worrying them is the impact that that's having on patient care. There aren't enough nurses and nursing staff to deliver the care that's needed. So patients are waiting too long for their operations. They're waiting for ambulances, they're waiting for beds, and it just is not safe for patients any longer. And nurses are saying, we've had enough, we can't continue, something needs to change.
And yet the Health Secretary for England, Steve Barclay, would say that what you're asking for, effectively 19.2% of a pay rise, costing £10 billion a year, just simply isn't affordable. It's not realistic, is it?
So we think it is realistic in terms of the country needs to have more nursing staff to be able to deliver the services that the public need. So it's a choice that the government needs to make. But what we need to do now is get back round the table, and that's the disappointment for us. Our members sent this message a good few weeks ago now to the health ministers and health secretary, and yet he's refused to talk to us about the things that matter to our members, pay and patient safety. And really, we won't be able to move this forward unless we do have negotiations. So we ask him again to come back to the table to have some serious negotiations about the things that need to change to increase the number of nurses in the workforce and increase the amount and safety of care that people can deliver.
So if the Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, has yet to meaningfully engage with you over these negotiations, what makes you think that strike action will change that?
Well, I think we've tried talking and talking and talking over years, but the government just hasn't listened. And so our members are telling us very loudly now, we can't just continue trying to write letters and have conversations. And they've given up that that's going to work. And we gave another few weeks chance to see if things would change with the signal of strikes, with the resounding message that the members sent when they voted. But that hasn't yet worked. And so it's with a really heavy heart that we have had to now announce dates in December when our members will go on strike across the UK.
Well, yes, and how worried are you about the impact on patients? Could people be put in danger because of these strikes?
Well, we feel that patients are being put in danger every single day. And actually, when we take strike action, we will ensure that safety is as it is now, so that patients are safe, that there is access to emergency services to make sure that people, life and limb services are maintained. But of course, the strike is going to be disruptive, and we acknowledge that, but there is no point in us striking unless it disrupts. But that disruption has got to send a strong message to the government that they need to talk and that we mean business and that members mean business, but we will do it safely.
Well, yes, and talking of that disruption, this comes as there are 7 million people in England waiting for treatment. That's a record high. This is only going to make matters worse, isn't it?
I think we have to face the facts that a day or two of strike action really is not the issue. The issue is years and years of underfunding. These waiting lists have not grown to this level as a result of nurses taking strike action. They've grown to this level in part because of COVID, but largely over the last 10 years with the underfunding, the reduction in the number of staff that there are to deliver services, resulting in increasing waiting lists, increasing waiting times, etc., etc. So no, our strikes are not going to make much difference to that. The problem is years of underfunding, and the action needs to happen now to improve that.
So what's your message to the patients whose surgeries or treatments are going to be cancelled because of this strike?
We're doing this for you. This is about nurses standing up for themselves, but also critically for patients. We know that the public support nursing staff in general, and we know they support us through this action. So we want you to come on this journey with us. We are sorry for any disruption that's caused, but actually, unless we do this, we don't see any prospect of things changing anytime soon.
Just a couple of questions on the process. Why did you choose to regionalise the voting process? Was that because you knew you didn't have the numbers for a national vote?
We think that members should have a choice at local level, and that's what members have done. They've taken that choice at local level. We also operate in 4 countries across the UK, and all have different health systems and different devolved responsibilities. So we decided to do that because of those reasons. And as has been shown, there is stronger feeling in some areas than others, but even in the areas that didn't get over the 50% level set by the government, the numbers were huge, in the 40, 48, 49%. So we were very close, and members have spoken loudly across the country. Even if they're not in a position to take strike action, they're still sending that strong message. Where people voted, most times it was 80, 90% of them voting yes to strike.
And your strike, one of the days that you've named, the 15th of December, comes in the same week as postal strikes and railway strikes. Has there been any coordination with other unions over the timing of your walkout?
No, there hasn't. And in fact, it may not look the same if we were coordinating. The reality is that workers across the country are sending a message to the government to say that things, the salary rises that are being paid and the threats to jobs in other sectors, not for us, but in other sectors, are really having an impact. So no, there's not been any coordination. We are working as the Royal College of Nursing on our own at the moment, and obviously other NHS unions, health unions are also currently balloting their members. So they may also after Christmas be considering strike action themselves.
Well, Patricia Marquis, Director for England of the RCN, thanks very much indeed for talking to us here this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Let's take a look now at what the weather's up to.
Anticipation is rising, and so is the atmosphere. Are you ready? The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Well, today will be somewhat drier and brighter, but the weekend will bring more wet and windy spells of weather our way. It's going to be mostly bright but chilly first thing, with a local frost inland. There'll be some showers, mainly in the north and the west. Overall, today will bring more in the way of sunny spells and fewer showers. Temperatures will be around average, but that does feel much colder now, especially after the recent mild weather. And the showers will be heaviest and most frequent across the windier northwest.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Now, is it Where's Wally? No, it's the Macy's Thanksgiving March in New York City. This might explain what I'm talking about. Yesterday marked the 96th annual event to kick off the holiday season, and it began bright and early, just before 9 a.m. in Central Park. One person didn't get the memo. It's a 2.5-mile route winding around the city and ended up at Macy's Herald Square on 7th Avenue. And keeping in the festive mood, it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas at Windsor Castle. That's not Windsor Castle. I think that might be Macy's. Royal Collection Trust staff have finished putting the finishing touches on the Christmas tree in the Crimson Room. That's Windsor Castle. So have you got your Christmas tree up? There are Christmas trees up here. Mine doesn't go up until a few days before, but largely because I'm really disorganised. Anyway, do stay with us. Coming up here on Sky News Breakfast, we're going to be speaking to the founder of the Not Your Porn campaign after changes have been made to the online safety bill to ban down blousing and deep fake pornography. More coming up. Now, new laws will ban down-blousing images and deep-fake pornography shared without consent. In an amendment to the online safety bill, those found guilty of taking photos down a woman's top or manipulating explicit images to look like someone else could be jailed. Well, to get some reaction, I'm joined now by the founder of Not Your Porn, Kate Isaacs, who worked with the government on the amendments to the online safety bill. So very good morning to you. Thanks so much for coming in and talking to us. So first of all, your reaction to this tightening up of the law here.
It's absolutely welcomed. I think this is something we've been calling on for such a long time now. And unfortunately, technology moves so quickly. We're already lagging a bit behind, but I think we're moving in the right direction. The only concern I have at the moment is whether we actually put it into law properly, because obviously these are announcements and it's not legally binding at the moment.
So you need that to push forward. And you have had discussions with the government, haven't you? So what's your message been to them about priorities?
I think a lot of it, when it comes to things like image-based sexual abuse and the current laws we have in place, there are a lot of loopholes that mean that prosecutions don't tend to happen very frequently. So it's about kind of closing those loopholes that exist and broadening the terms, and also adjusting that legislative process, because, as you can imagine, the legislative process in this country is incredibly slow and technology is incredibly fast. And so things like deepfake technology is so accessible now. If we don't move quick enough, if we don't put these into actual laws, these proposals very quickly, we're just going to be lagging behind again and they won't be as relevant.
And you've been campaigning on this for a long time now, haven't you? What got you started with that?
So I started the Not Your Porn campaign back in 2019 when a friend of mine ended up on a very popular porn website without her consent. Her iCloud account was hacked and she ended up trending on there. I found that it was really difficult to get that video down, and I started doing my own investigations into the moderation that was happening on these platforms, or lack of, and I started talking to the Ministry of Justice about what the existing laws were at the time, which were very, very loose, and decided I wanted to do something about it. So started campaigning for platform liability, went after a platform that regularly did not moderate their content frequently, and as a result we managed to get about 80% of that content taken down, which was about 10 million videos at the time, which was huge. But unfortunately after that I became a bit of a target on Twitter myself.
Yeah, and we talk about deep fake. That's when your face is put on somebody else's body, and you can only imagine what they can do with those images. And that happened to you, didn't it? And
yeah.
So what was that like for you to find out about?
It was very scary. I think a lot of people were really, they were celebratory of the changes that the platform was making. I think most people can agree that porn, if it's not consenting by an adult or of children, I hope the majority would agree that that's horrendous. So having that removed from that platform was a really big win, but unfortunately there was a very small minority of very loud people on Twitter who decided that they wanted to silence me, and the deepfake was part of that. They shared my home address online and threatened to attack me and film it and upload it. And they put an interview that I had done from the campaign into a deepfake pornography film with the narrative that I myself was in a porn film and I regretted it, and that was why I wanted to get it off the internet. And it was incredibly realistic to the point where I even questioned whether that was me for a few seconds, which is obviously very scary as a woman to not remember having sex with someone. That was terrifying in itself. But then when I realised it was a manipulated image, but it was so realistic that actually it didn't really matter that it was fake because it looked so real, and perception is reality, right? So yeah, it was really distressing, and it felt very, very violating to have my identity used in a way that I didn't consent to.
And is this something that mostly happens to celebrities and people in the public eye?
Not anymore. I think it used to, definitely. I think in terms of, you know, if we think about leaked sex tapes, it tends to be that celebrity leaked sex tape narrative. And we've seen that shift massively over the last decade. And that's kind of happening with deepfakes now. It used to be with deepfake technology that you had to have some sort of specialist skills to do it, much like it used to be with Photoshop to be able to edit an image. And now you can download an app that, you know, you can change your face structure in a click of a button. And that's how far we've progressed with deepfake apps as well. So anyone can do it. It's incredibly accessible. And so they're doing it to their colleagues, their work friends, anyone that they want to sort of enjoy in that way or threaten or intimidate. And unfortunately, it's happening to, I mean, if you have an image of yourself or a video of yourself online, you are a target, unfortunately. So.
And just you saying how fast everything is changing, that reminder of the point that you made, that technology is moving very fast, and it is a real challenge to make sure the law keeps up with that. Are you confident that in future it will?
I'm optimistic, but not naive. And I think that there definitely needs to be a change in the legislative system, and I'll continue to work on that and fight for that. In the time being, I really welcome these announcements. They've been a long time coming. But we really need action at this point, and we need to make sure that any law that we do put in place has platform liability in there as well, which isn't mentioned in the proposed legislation yet, but also that we can kind of increase and broaden the terms of what image-based sexual abuse looks like so we can keep up and we can make sure these are based on definitions that we could apply new technology to. And if we do that, fantastic. If we don't, we are going to be doing what we've been doing for the last 20 years and just playing catch-up.
Well, Kate Isaacs, we really appreciate you coming in to talk about it. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you for having me.
Now, retail experts have predicted that the cost of living crisis may dampen this year's Black Friday sales rush. This is the first festive season for 3 years without any COVID restrictions. So let's discuss this a little bit further now. Here to talk about it with me is Ed Connolly, who's Chief Operations Officer at Currys Central Store on Oxford Street in London. And also joining me is Claire Seal, a personal finance expert. So a very good morning to both of you. Nice to talk to you this morning. To start with you, Ed Connolly, just how big a deal is Black Friday to a retailer like you? How important is it a day in terms of your takings over the course of the year?
Well, it's a very important moment for us and for our customers. To put it in some type of context, we would expect to take a full average week's sales in just one day. So it is big for us, and we know it's huge for our customers, a real fixture in customers' calendars, and they look to us every year to produce a real show for them.
Is it quite useful for clearing stock as well?
We don't actually use this date to clear stock. So they're current lines that we work on throughout the year to bring, this year we're bringing 2,500 new deals to customers. So we actually clear our stocks later in the calendar. This is all about new stock and innovation and new products for Christmas.
Well, yes, and Claire, this is a time when we're hearing so much about the cost of living rises and our bills all going up. How much of an impact do you think that'll have on this year's sales?
So I think people are definitely planning to be a bit more careful with how they spend and a bit more planned about things. People may be sort of relying on credit a bit more, but actually I think some of the stats from Currys said that still over 2/3 of people are planning on spending on debit card, with sort of, I think, about 20% of people looking to finance it with credit. So it's just going to be about, I think, being a bit more careful, a bit more planned with those purchases, focusing on quality as well. And I think that's something where it's really great to look at reviews. If you're shopping in store, definitely grab someone to ask. Most of the people who are working, especially in tech, are experts. So I think it's just going to be really about just being careful, being planned. I would definitely advise people, if you are going to use credit, have a plan to pay it off. I've fallen foul of not doing that myself in the past. And it's just a really good idea not to set yourself up for, a headache going into 2023 for one weekend, but it can be a really good opportunity to grab some essentials or Christmas gifts at the best price and using kind of the safest financing options.
Well, yes, and Ed Connolly, I mean, to what extent do you think the fact that there is a cost of living crisis will hit your sales? Or do you think, in fact, people will think, well, this is the time when I should buy, so actually you may find that it's a bigger year than usual? What's your prediction?
I guess we'll find out later today, but my guess is that customers who haven't been able to participate fully in Black Friday for the last couple of years will really want to engage with it. There's definitely a buzz which has been building throughout the week. Millions of people visiting our website. Our stores are expecting a lot of footfall today, so we are definitely set up for a very big day. We're expecting to engage millions of customers in the deal set that we've got.
Well, yeah, and how wary should customers be, Claire, in all the sales, given the fact that the consumer group Which had talked about just 1 in 7 deals offering real discounts? They say that generally deals should be taken with a pinch of salt. Is that good advice, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's definitely always a really great idea to kind of keep your wits about you. I think quite a lot of people are savvy to it now. So a lot of people will have been tracking the price of things, and there's technology that you can use to do that. But also, I think like I said before, it's really about focusing on, the quality of things and making sure that you're getting the right product at a good price, rather than going for something that might appear to be kind of a really good deal, but might not last you quite as long. So, I think it's a really good idea to be switched on, to be kind of aware of what the prices of things have been, and to just make sure, also make sure that it's worth it to you. Obviously, Martin Lewis says that, if you buy something at 50% off and you were going to buy it anyway, you saved 50%. But if you weren't going to buy it anyway and you buy it just because it's on sale, you have it's cost you 100%. So I think it's worth keeping in mind as a rule of thumb.
Yeah, that is a good rule of thumb, and something that I've been guilty of not having in mind when I've seen some bargains. It's so easy to do, isn't it? We really appreciate your time, both of you, this morning. Ed Connolly from Currys and Claire Seal, personal finance expert. Some good advice there. Thanks very much indeed for talking to us. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, time now to check out what the weather's up to.
Anticipation is rising, and so is the atmosphere. Are you ready? The Weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Well, today will be somewhat brighter and drier, but the weekend will bring more wet and windy spells of weather our way, I'm afraid to say. It's going to be mostly bright but chilly first thing, with a local frost inland. There'll be some showers, mainly in the north and the west. Overall, today will bring in the way of sunny spells and fewer showers. Temperatures will be around average, but that does feel much colder now, especially after the recent mild weather. The showers will be heaviest and most frequent across the windy and northwest, but these should tend to ease later. And showers will clear northwest Scotland tonight to leave most places dry and breezy. However, cloud will increase in the west later, bringing rain to parts of Ireland. And that's our next wet and windy spell, which will move eastwards during Saturday, bringing a risk of gales for Irish sea coasts. It'll turn milder, not that you'll notice, in the wind and the rain. Saturday's rain band will erratically clear eastwards on Sunday to leave some sunny spells and some blustery showers.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Now then, just have time to tell you about London Zoo and what they've been up to. They've had a very special delivery just in time for Christmas. It's Kiburi, an 18-year-old lowland gorilla who was inside that crate, flown over from Tenerife as part of an international breeding programme for endangered species. Now, he was given VIP treatment by DHL, as you can see there, for the 1,900-mile journey, travelling in that custom-built crate supported by a dedicated team of zookeepers. And later on, we're going to be talking to one of those zookeepers about his arrival here in the UK and what the plans are next, and also how his journey suited him. Do stay with us here on Sky News Breakfast. We're going to be hearing from the Labour Party in just a moment as nurses announce they're going to be striking for 2 days next month.